I have a head cold and I can't really breathe, but it made me think about how oxygens was formed, and you don't know how oxygens was formed because you're an idiot. And I'm going to tell you right now how it was formed, and basically, you probably think it comes from like forests and stuff, but it doesn't. It does, but not as much as you think. You don't know this, but most of half of the world's oxygen comes from the ocean. And that ocean, you probably think it's also from like algae and marine plants and stuff, but really most of it is not from there. It's from little things you can't see called phytoplankton and cyanobacteria. If you don't know what cyanobacteria is, you need to get on your knees and thank it for your life, because it basically created oxygen so that you could breathe. And what it did was about 4.5 billion years ago, the earth was formed. Okay, and then for 1 billion years, there was like nothing. There's no oxygen. And then cyanobacteria came along about 3 billion years ago. And about 2.3 billion years ago, it really started popping off, doing this thing where the atmosphere was covered in carbon dioxide and nitrogen. And it said, I'm going to eat you. And then it ate it. And it turned it into energy. And it pumped out a byproduct called oxygen. And this, my friends, is called photosynthesis. And this photosynthesis is like when you're like in the sun and you like spread out and you like get all warm and you feel all good and it like revives you. That is what photosynthesis is. You actually don't do it, but I'm assuming that's what plants feel like. And then they start photosynthesizing and the oxygen levels started skyrocketing in the world, and it was called the Great Oxygenation Event of 2.3 billion years ago. And then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. I'm kidding. But everything did change permanently because then things could breathe. And then about the levels of oxygen in the world went from like 0% up to like 20%. And then that's when land plants came along. And these terrestrial plants started photosynthesizing as well with these marine plants. And then the terrestrial plants started pumping out oxygen, and then everything started making oxygen. And then the levels went from like 20 up to like 35%. It started exploding, and that's when dinosaurs came along. And then the dinosaurs, people think that that's why dinosaurs were so big, because there was so much oxygen, but they're wrong. Stupid idiot, you're wrong. It's really because of like an abundance of resources, and being bigger meant you didn't get preyed upon, and they had a hollow bone so they could support their big structure, and they laid eggs so they didn't have to carry babies in their tummy. And then a meteor hit and it like covered the world with smoke, and then the sunlight couldn't get to the plants, and so the plants all died, and then photosynthesis kind of stopped for a moment. But really the drop in oxygenation was from climate change, and the world went from swampy oxygen making machine to like cooler climates where oxygen doesn't make as much. And then we slowly rose back up to like 21%. I think it dropped to like 12%, and then it slowly rose back up to like 21% where we are now. And that is oxygen.